Hello, fellow bibliophiles, and welcome back to Blatantly Bookish. I'm Marissa, and I am back after my little 2-week hiatus here, and I'm finally doing my February reading wrap-up. I did not read a ton in February, but I still have some exciting books to discuss with you today, including 2 classics and a nonfiction book, so let's just dive right in. The nonfiction book that I read in the month of February was If Walls Could Talk, An Intimate History of the Home by Lucy Worsley. Lucy Worsley is my favorite nonfiction author, although I have to say that I am actively reading my second book by Ruth Goodman, and she is giving Lucy a run for her money. But If Walls Could Talk is about the history of the house and the home, and it takes the reader on a tour of the bedroom, the bathroom, the living room, and the kitchen. She uses these living spaces and how they change over time to study change in human perception and thought over history. She focuses on the evolution of the home from the medieval period to the Tudor period to the Victorian time period, and she does an excellent job of bringing this history to life. Lucy Worsley brings humor and perspective to history in her unique voice, and this book is really rather chatty, almost like Lucy is our tour guide, walking us through these living spaces. The book is full of fun details and tidbits of information, like the people of Tudor England believed that a sprig of rosemary placed above the bed would help prevent nightmares, and that saucepans and pots and pans in general were a woman's most prized possession, because they were often awarded to women in cases of divorce. And there were also larger cultural trends that this book explores, like how bedrooms were not private spaces and were actually shared by a multitude of families for long periods of time, and how the closet used to be more than just for clothing, and how bathing wasn't even popular in the 1500s and 1600s. Yet that didn't mean that people didn't value cleanliness, they just believed in cleaning themselves in different ways. This book, while fun and interesting, does really only focus on the English home, and it doesn't have a wealth of information about the US. Lucy Worsley's books usually are focused on Great Britain, so that wasn't really a surprise to me, but is just something I thought was worth mentioning to you guys. And because this book so frequently jumps between time periods, it serves as a general overview and focuses more on change over time than a true analysis of any one time period. I listened to this book on audiobook, and probably because of that, I had a really hard time picturing what medieval society was like in comparison to Tudor society. Because I already know so much about the Victorian time period, there wasn't any new information that Lucy provided for me there. This book, combined with the fact that everyone on BookTube is reading Wolf Hall right now, made me interested to learn more about the Tudor time period. So I picked up Ruth Goodman's How to Be a Tudor on audiobook, and I'm still reading it and enjoying it, and I will probably discuss that in my March reading wrap-up. But I would definitely recommend this book to you, If Walls Could Talk, for fans of light history, social histories, and for fans of Lucy Worsley, of course, because she's amazing. I do think I preferred Lucy Worsley's other books to this one, but this was still highly enjoyable, and I would definitely recommend it to pretty much everyone. This month, I also finished Jo's Boys by Louisa May Alcott. This is the 3rd book in the Little Women series, and it takes place 10 years after Little Men ends. We go back to the Plumfield School and see how Jo's boys turned out, who they marry, and what professions and accomplishments they achieve. We also get to witness Jo pursue her passion for writing now that her boys are more grown up. I have very mixed feelings about this book. I appreciated revisiting some of these characters that I grew fond of in Little Men, and there were 2 particular female characters, Nan and Josie, that I fell in love with. But there were also many character trajectories that just did not sit well with me. In many ways, Jo's boys are still learning moral lessons and making mistakes, and I feel that a lot of them suffer greatly for that over the course of the book. In most cases, I felt that Louisa May Alcott was unnecessarily harsh on her characters, and their outcomes in life were fairly disappointing. One of my favorite characters, Dan, was the biggest disappointment. His storyline is so bleak and begs the question, did Jo fail him as a mother figure? Do all of his good works make up for his tragic plotline? Should he even feel guilty for his blunder? In some ways, the sense of black and white morality that Joe enforces in his childhood has crippled him and made him profoundly unhappy. Professionally, many of the other boys' dreams do come true after much hard work and struggle, but their romantic entanglements seem so unexpected and unsuited to the characters. Two other characters, Tommy and Nat, have fraught romantic relationships. Nat problematically strings along two girls for most of the book, and Tommy suddenly and unconvincingly parts with his childhood crush and forms a hasty engagement. None of the romantic relationships felt believable to me, and were generally not the happy little twee ending that I had hoped for in Little Women or for Joe's Boys. But Josie and Nan are fantastic and inspiring characters. Josie is determined to make it as an actress, and she is such an ambitious and determined young girl. She's a manifestation of her mother Meg's talent for acting, combined with Joe's familiar, strong will and tenacious personality. And Nan is the character that I wish Joe had become. She shirks the idea of traditional romantic love in favor of her love for her career. Also, Nan's relationship with Tommy harkens back to Joe and Laurie, and it's interesting to see that relationship played out slightly differently with familiar undertones. Joe's Boys generally serves as a platform for Louisa to explore her ideas of women's suffrage, education, temperance, and the prison system. And I found the bits about Joe's writing career fascinating, and I wonder how closely they mirror Louisa's own experience as an author. This book makes me examine morality and question what success truly looks like. It made me think about what it takes to be a good parent and teacher, and what our moral responsibility in this world is to ourselves and to others. None of Louisa May Alcott's characters are perfect in this book, and that is what makes it interesting. I think I liked this book far less than the average person. Megan Hannett and Kate Howe had far more positive responses than I did to this book, and you should hear what they have to say as well, if you're considering reading it. And of course, if you're a completionist and want to read the whole Little Women series, I would definitely read this book. For me, I would have been satisfied simply reading Little Women over and over again, and I think that that's what I will be doing in the future. I'll probably try to read something outside of the Little Women series as well, because Louisa May Alcott, I think, is a talented author, and I want to see what she can do outside of the characters from Little Women. I also read A Passage to India by E.M. Forster this month, which was such a treat. I talked about this quite a bit in my weekend wrap-up video right when I finished it, but I absolutely loved it, and I can't wait to read some more by E.M. Forster. He is such a brilliant author, and there's something so subtle and beautiful about the way he writes. And his dialogue is particularly inspired, and I do see a lot of similarities in his writing to Jane Austen's works. A Passage to India is the most interesting book I've read about the clash between cultures and prejudice and racism. It takes place under the British rule of India during the British Raj and follows both native British characters who have relocated to India as well as characters of Indian descent. We are drawn to two characters, the elderly Mrs. Moore and the young Adela Quested. Adela has come to the town of Chandrapur to assess whether she should marry Mrs. Moore's son, who's a government official in Chandrapur. The two women share the desire to see the real India rather than the watered-down British version that the majority of the British natives present to them. They befriend a Muslim doctor named Aziz who takes them on an expedition to the beautiful, historic Marabar Caves, but a scandal occurs on this expedition which heightens the already tenuous race relations and affects the lives of all those who are involved. This book portrays really complex and nuanced views of different characters and leaves virtually no character truly blameless and unbiased. Even within Indian culture, there are deep-seated prejudices between the Muslims and the Hindus that, looking back on history, we know will ultimately lead to the separation and distinction between India and Pakistan. This book is all about the gulf between people of different races and the difficulties of interpersonal relationships, as well as the effects of imperialism on society. The book was absolutely brilliant, and I just want to thrust it into everyone's hands and everyone's laps and force them to sit down and read it. It was absolutely brilliant. I did find some issue with the treatment of gender in this book, specifically when it comes to rape culture. I do think it promotes some negative stereotypes about rape culture and perpetuates that in our society. But you do have to remember this book was written a long time ago, although that was no excuse for it in terms of race. It did an excellent job with that subject matter, so I only wish it could have done just as spectacular a job with gender. But I still do want to thrust it into everyone's hands. So that is all I have for you guys today. That is what I read in the month of February. I would love to hear in the comments down below if you've read any of these books, what you read in the month of February, what you're enjoying lately, and if you have any recommendations for me based off of what I enjoyed or didn't enjoy this month. Thank you all for watching and subscribing, and I look forward to seeing you in another video soon. Bye!